just a reminder to spotlight us. We don't seem to have that power. So.
All right. I see we've got our attendees coming in. Good evening, everybody. I think apologies for getting off to a little bit of a late start, but we wanted to make sure that we had all of our processes in place and our functions functioning so that we can have a smooth presentation tonight. I'm going to begin by letting everyone know that we have an ASL interpreter as well as a Spanish interpreter with us tonight. If you need Spanish interpretation, please look at the bottom of the meeting and click the interpretation button, which is the little globe, and you can select the language you'd like to hear. To hear the interpreted language only, we want you to make sure and click the mute original audio button. That way you're not hearing both the English version and the chosen language. If anyone has any issues with that, please feel free to drop a note in the Q&A section, and we'll be sure to address that as quickly as we can. All right. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just introduce yourself and give an overview of what tonight's all about and where this is in the RFP process, that would be great.
Sure, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Blade, and I work with the city's procurement department. What we do is we run the solicitations when the city needs to hire a vendor to perform services for us. This particular solicitation was intended to search out vendors that could provide a gunshot detection system for the city to test out in a smaller area and then see where that goes. So we did a competitive solicitation and we received 4 proposals from interested vendors. We had an evaluation committee score those based on what we had asked for in the solicitation documents and the point categories there. The 2 highest score proposers are who we're going to talk to tonight. Those are the 2 vendors that had what the evaluation committee looked at as the best value for the city. So we're going to have those interviews tonight, and this will be the second round of evaluations for determining who's the highest scored proposer overall and who's going to provide the best value for the city.
Thank you. Yeah, I will also just give a brief overview of the format that we'll follow tonight so that we can make sure both presenters have an adequate chance to present their proposals, as well as to answer our evaluator panel questions and our questions from the public. Please, I would encourage everyone to type their question in the Q&A because we do have folks from both companies who can answer questions in that feature. As we get into our public comment period, then I think we will do our best to try to get to raised hands. But putting them in the Q&A will help to make sure that we get your questions answered. And if we can't complete those in the time that we have tonight, we'll make sure that we're doing everything we can to get those answers and follow up with that. To answer a question that was posed in the chat, we are recording this and we will be posting this on the mayor's website. I think that's probably going to be tomorrow before that happens, but this will be available there. To follow a quick format here, what we're doing, as Jeff mentioned, is we are receiving proposals from our top 2 scoring proposers in the initial RFP request process. So we will provide in two chunks, one presentation from ShotSpotter, followed by time allotted for evaluation committee questions, and then time for public questions. And then we will move to the next presenter, which will be Eagle. And same thing, we'll provide them time for their presentation, followed by questions from our evaluation panel, and then we will open it up to the public. So without further ado, I think, unless I've missed anything, Jeff, I think we can begin with our presenters from ShotSpotter.
That was great, Stephanie. You covered it well. Thank you.
All right, so should I go ahead and start, Stephanie? Great. This is
Yes.
Terry Green. I'm Terry Green, and I'm the Western States Director for ShotSpotter. Our new name is Sound Thinking, and ShotSpotter is the name of our gunshot detection and location system. I'm here with two people from my team, our Public Safety Director, Ron Teachman, and Paul John, who is our Community Engagement Director. And we're just honored to be here and just really excited about the opportunity to talk to you tonight and answer questions and make this really productive for all. Thank you. And I'll introduce Ron Teachman, and he can further elaborate on his questions that were posed to us on Friday.
Thank you, Terry. Let me share my screen and begin this discussion. Is that shown okay, Terry?
Yep, you're good, Ron.
All right, thank you. So a quick overview of the company, and then I'll get into trying to answer some of the questions that we have been given in the first 10, 15 minutes as instructed, and then we'll open it up to the evaluator questions that have not been covered in this main brief presentation. So I'll begin by giving you a quick overview of the company. ShotSpotter has been in business for over 27 years. We're currently serving over 150 cities with the gunshot detection solution. We have other solutions in our portfolio to expand to 250 customers, but for our conversation tonight, focusing on the gunshot detection, that's 150 cities and 1,000+ miles currently under contract. Most of those miles are in service right now. Some of the last few are being built out as I'm speaking to you. We have 40 patents that distinguish us in the public safety industry. And over the past 3 years, we've had a phenomenal retention rate among our customers, 99% retention, and many, a third to half of those customers have expanded in their original footprint, as we call it, when they first began their service. I'm going to briefly explain that ShotSpotter will tell you what happened, when it happened, and where it happened. We don't tell you who, as we say to the police, that's on you. But we do help with solvability. But our function is what happened, when it happened, and where it happened. So how does that occur? How does ShotSpotter work? Well, in the areas of the city that have been determined by the city, usually by the police department, based on historical crime data, where are your homicides and your non-fatal shootings, and your other gun crime. When that area is determined, we then set out to install, monitor, and maintain an infrastructure. We call it a sensor array, placing our acoustic sensors on rooftops of buildings and on utility poles as needed, but mainly on buildings, government buildings first, and privately owned commercial and residential properties that we seek permission to use those rooftops. So just want to emphasize, because I believe it was one of the questions, who's responsible for the installation? What about maintenance? This is a SaaS model, a software, a solution as a service. We install, monitor, and maintain the entire infrastructure. Another question that came up was, well, about the range of the sensors. Rather than talk about the individual range, because sensor range depends a lot on acoustic and atmospheric conditions, the type of ammunition used, the caliber of the firearm. What we do is place sufficient sensors in the coverage area to guarantee a service level agreement of at least 90% notification. And I know there was some question about the percentages. We promise a little bit lower than we perform. We promise to give you 90% notification with only, in the last couple of years, a false positive rate of 0.5%, but we performed at 97% as researched by an outside evaluative firm called Edgeworth Analytics. So once a sensor array is built, when a gunshot occurs, that acoustic event radiates out and hits the sensors at measurably different times. We timestamp each sensor activation and then send the data up to the cloud where the computer determines the time differential of each sensor activation. We'll call it triangulation for simplicity, but it's multilateration. We might have 6, 8, 10 or more sensors all participating in one acoustic event. So the time stamping is how we get the location. Detection location is the first thing that occurs in this process. Then, while the data is up in the cloud, a machine classifier filters out most of the extraneous noises, the noises that don't match the characteristics of gunfire, backfire, helicopters, jackhammers, and so forth. What is likely to be gunfire is then sent for human review. We think this is rather unique in the industry. We send the information for a human to confirm what the computer may have suggested to be gunfire. That human goes through a number of steps. I will just mention 3 quickly. They listen to the audio recording, and I do want to stress that these acoustic technicians go through 4 phases of training over 2 months before they are performing in this function individually. So they listen to the audio recording of the acoustic event. And to their trained ear, they're very good at discerning fireworks, for example, that often have a whistle and a fizzle from gunfire. Then they look at the waveform configuration, and gunshots are unique. They then look at the sensor participation. We know where each of these acoustic sensors have been located because we installed them. We mark the latitude and longitude. I'll blow this up. So they're looking at all these different monitors in the Incident Review Center. They see the participation of sensors and see if there's a omnidirectional or linear pattern. If it's omnidirectional, so I've been a circle, that's probably not gunfire. Those other noises, the backfire, the fireworks, the helicopters, the jackhammers, those noises radiate omnidirectionally where gunfire is linear. So here they are working in their Incident Review Center, and we have 2 locations for redundancy, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. They also sit near each other for peer review, and they review these incidents. Now, just to give you an example of how strenuous this process is to make sure we're only sending the police on actual gunfire, last year, across our customer base, we heard 12.5, almost 13 million bangs, booms, and pops. We suppressed most of those, about 58%. The remainder went for the review for the human, and we only published less than 300,000. That's a publication rate of only about 2%. So very, very accurate on discerning gunfire from all those other noises. And that whole process, by the way, takes far less time than it took me to explain. Under 60 seconds, contractually guaranteed to get the police to the precise location in order to save lives, solve crime, and engage the community. Now, again, I spoke about the accuracy question. The service level agreement is a promise of 90% notification of external unsuppressed gunfire with 25 caliber, but our performance has been reviewed by an independent firm, Edgeworth Analytics, and we've been performing at 97% notification with a false positive rate of 0.5%. Now, what happens after we determine it's gunfire? We send a data package simultaneously to your 911 communication center, to desktops, for example, at police headquarters, but perhaps more importantly, to get a law enforcement or public safety response, it goes out to the field, to patrol cars for uniform officers or detectives, what they call the mobile data terminals, also to tablets. It goes to the officers' phones and even to their smartwatches. And we perform on both Android and iOS platforms. So regardless of the type of device the officers have, we can send this information immediately. Let me just give you a couple of screenshot views of what this might look like from the officer's perspective as we determine it's gunfire. So when we hear a noise and it gets filtered, as I just suggested, when we conclude it's gunfire, we send an alert that would bring that noise and a pop-up to invite the officer to bring this screen to the front of their display. They would see the number of rounds fired, and this is our contractual guarantee of location accuracy, a 25-meter radius. We do co-locate the nearest street address because you need a partial address for police report purposes. But unlike 911, that might send you to the front door to meet a complainant, we send the officer to the dot. It's caught to the dot because that's where your victim and your evidence might be. But we do need a street address, so we identify that on a parcel map. We give a timestamp of the exact time of the incident. And then we append tactical intelligence, such as, was there more than one shooter? We can determine that by overlapping sounds and distinct acoustic characteristics. If there's a full automatic weapon, we would discern that and append this as well. In this instance, it's a high capacity gun. That's more than 10 rounds being fired from a particular firearm without pausing to reload. And as your officers are en route, we send an investigative lead summary with a timestamp of every shot fired, and very importantly, the sequence of shots. We can sequence them as they occur and we mark them. And sequence is very important to help your investigation determine who the primary aggressor was, and also for officer-involved shooting reviews. Another example, you get that distinct audio alert. You see the number 7 here. The officers want to hear the audio recording of the gunfire. They click on this blue arrow. The gunfire is recorded. It's in that package, the data package that's sent. So the officers, dispatchers, everybody involved in this process can hear the gunshots to affirm for themselves. And as the officers are en route, if they want to see, if they're not familiar with the location, for example, another officer is going to an unusual beat because that original beat officer is tied up on another call. This street view interfaces with Google Maps directly, so the officer can get a panoramic view of the location they're being dispatched to. Instead of driving, looking for an address and driving into a hot zone, they can pick a landmark building like this one here on the far right and make a tactical approach. In addition, as you see this pop up, the officer brings it to the forward, gets the number of rounds that were in the event. Now we're able to take each of those gunshots with a specific latitude and longitude marking. We consolidate the dot, the dispatch. We're able to break down each of those shots and determine, in this case, I'll blow this up, direction of travel and speed of travel. So those 8 rounds are not fired from one location. They're fired up the street. We can determine it's a moving shooter going up East 22nd Street at 15 miles an hour. And as the officers are en route, on their phone, they can hit this icon and it shows them as the blue dot where they are in relation to the crime scene, particularly that 25-meter radius. So it gives a more accurate approach, a safer approach to make sure they get to the right location, again, to attend to a victim and gather evidence. Another example here, imagine if somebody called about fireworks. Here we would determine 18 rounds are fired. The street view gives you a 3-dimensional view. It's a bridge. Now we know to send sufficient personnel to cover the street and the bridge as well. Now, in addition, we allow the officers to look back over the last 24 hours of coverage to see the incidents that occurred. 3 days if they've been off for a couple of days on their regular rotation, or 7 days if they've been on, say, a week's vacation. They can go back indefinitely. This just gives you on their device what they can see in short term. For command staff, allocating resources, looking at what happens over 24 hours, 3 days, particularly when they see these clusters, then they can deploy resources strategically. Now, I want to stop for a moment and just give a few minutes to my colleague, Paul John, to talk about how we can use this data, how we encourage our customers to use this data for community engagement, and also what we call data for good, especially when you see these clusters. Paul?
Appreciate it, Ron. So in addition to real-time alerts, ShotSpotter collects vital data on the general location of gunfire that can be used to help inform social and mental health services in the community. We partner with a variety of stakeholders to ensure that victims of gun violence and people exposed to gunfire are receiving resources to address the effects of gun violence and its root causes. So ShotSpotter can be used for crime response and to facilitate a stronger relationship between the community and police by providing the general location data, a few blocks radius, and providing violence interrupter information that can help prevent retaliation or additional violence. Ultimately, there's potential for this data to help address collective community trauma, which has been impacting our school children. And it's important to understand that the trauma of gunfire goes beyond the physical victim. Even the sounds of gunfire can be traumatic to children. To address this issue, we have a national standard that when a law enforcement officer is made aware of a child who is a victim or witnessed a crime, that when it comes to school-based handle with care programs, that officer informs the child's school and counselors. In addition, we partner with a variety of programs such as Walk-In One Stop in Miami-Dade County, Florida, that uses ShotSpotter data to determine what communities are experiencing high rates of gun violence and thus need social and mental health services. We are composed of retired law enforcement executives who are experiencing community engagement and an acknowledge of the company's community-first approach and desire to expand positive impacts to stakeholders beyond law enforcement. We employ 2 community engagement directors. I'm one of them, and we have a dual purpose. First, we're responsible for directly engaging with community members in our customer and prospective customer cities, community-based organizations, and with other social, economic, and health stakeholders that support communities traumatized by gun violence. And second, we help ensure all ShotSpotters operations are trauma-informed, culturally sensitive, and community responsive. We develop dashboards that can notify offices of violence prevention precisely where gunfire is occurring, so they can more quickly dispatch violence interrupters and case managers where resources are needed most. We can inform school leaders and school-based mental health practitioners as to which specific blocks are being impacted by gun violence trauma so that they can provide support and interventions to students in need. We can enable hospital-based social work case managers and community violence intervention specialists to where gunfire is occurring so they can promptly provide follow-up services to reduce the likelihood of further victimization or retaliation. We can enable case managers to quickly identify clients who live near incidents of recent gunfire so they can make timely safety check-ins, offer crisis stabilization counseling, and provide other health services. We can inform public health departments and leaders where potential gun violence trauma is occurring so they can make informed deployment decisions for health programs, services, and investments. And finally, we can direct community health workers and outreach teams to the areas that experience a disproportionate amount of gunfire so they can prioritize those residents for enrollment in primary mental health care services where they're needed most. And under our contract, the Portland Police Bureau would have unrestricted right to download, copy, distribute, and use the data within its own organization exclusively for its own internal purposes and for the purposes of detecting and locating gunfire, and would work with us to determine which stakeholders need the gunfire most in collaboration, gunfire location data most in collaboration with the community. Ron?
Thank you, Paul. Ms. Howard, I know that you gave us 15 minutes. I'm trying to adhere to that. We have a lot more information to share, but I think you wanted to open this up now to have the evaluators ask their questions.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and Jeff, do you have the questions? Would you mind going through those questions?
Sure. Yeah, let's see, I don't think I can put them on screen.
You want me to stop sharing?
No, that's fine.
Okay, because I may be able to show some slides to answer the questions as they come, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if there's something that you have that could illustrate your response to the questions.
Okay.
Jeff, while you locate that, there is one question that I see in the Q&A that might be worth asking now. So I'll go ahead and take advantage of that if that's all right with you. So there is a question here that is concerned with existing wait times in 911 and you know, how this interacts with 911 if we all have already got long wait times. Could you maybe speak to how your technology interacts with 911 and how it may impact call wait times?
So first thing to understand is, although we generally say most gunfire is unreported, the national average is under 20%, and we're promising to give you at least 90%. There may be some concern about over resourcing or overbearing on the patrol capacity. But it's only going to be in the footprint area of the city, first of all, and it's only going to be for gunshot activity, not all types of crime. Most of our customers, I think all that I know of, are prioritizing their gun violence strategies and making response to a ShotSpotter alert a high priority call. While they're looking at disaggregating some of the other police functions, keeping gun violence response as a high priority, because we don't know if someone's been shot. We don't know if we need to give life-saving first responder care to that victim. But we also think, and our customers think, that it's imperative for the community to see a police response where they haven't been seeing that response historically. And this is really what ShotSpotter was designed and built to do, was to fill that gap of the public's expectation of a police response with the police ability to respond. That is really our why. That is really our essence. Where neighbors hear gunfire, think the police know, because they think the police are omniscient, much like the cops on TV. If they don't see a police response, they wonder if the police don't show, maybe, and if they think the police know, they think the police don't care. And so we give the police an opportunity to respond comprehensively. And while all of our customers are struggling perhaps with recruitment and retention and staffing issues, they prioritize ShotSpotter gunshot response in order to affect their mission of reducing gun violence.
Thanks. Jeff, are you ready to go with the questions?
Sure. How would you like me to share those? You want me to just put them up on the screen?
Whatever you think's best.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
Maybe just so that we can allow the presenters to show, maybe it'd be easier just to read the questions first.
Got it. Okay, so we had some questions that were for both vendors. First question, what overall effects have other municipal customers found in their community after integrating the gunshot detection system? Second question, can you provide a cost-benefit analysis for integration of the system? Is there data related to gun violence reduction that can be shared to verify the cost benefit? Is there data related to an increased conviction rate amongst criminal perpetrators of gun violence?
Sorry, Jeff, I was thinking we'd ask them one at a time, but it might be easier just to run through those as you were trying to do initially and post them on the screen so we can allow them to respond efficiently.
Okay. Let me share my screen here. Oh, disabled participant screen sharing. Are you able to share your screen, Stephanie? I just emailed them to all the evaluators a few seconds ago, so they should be in your mailbox.
I see a screen. Is that, Ron, is that your screen or?
It may be.
Okay, maybe if you can stop sharing, it might make it easier.
I'm trying, yeah.
All right, let me give it a shot here.
Yeah, I've stopped. It might,
Well, look at that. Looks like it's working.
okay.
So I will blow up the questions here. So Stephanie, we can go through one by one. I don't know, Ron and Terry, if you just want to address them.
I'll take that one first. So some of these we've responded to in our formal response, and much of this is covered. And if I could show my slides back, I would show you. If you look at our, and I can send the link, at soundthinking.com, we have a resource page and we have results. And we show those results where many of the cities have experienced a number of satisfactory results. And I would just say overall, the reason why we have 150 customers with a 99% retention rate, where so many of our customers, the third to a half, have expanded, is because they see the results. Now, what are the results they're seeing? The priorities change with each customer, but they're seeing us saving lives or helping them to save lives. For example, just one example, the city of Oakland in 1 year had over 100 shooting victims where ShotSpotter alerted the police to go to the scene and render first aid and transport to a trauma center, and there was no corresponding 911 call. Lives saved. And this is what we see across our customer base, because people don't call the police, and there's reasons why they don't. They don't think, they're not sure the noise is gunfire. They think someone else is going to call. They're afraid of retaliation, or they've given up. I call that recognition, redundancy, retaliation, resignation. Those 4 reasons particularly are why you only get 20% or less. So just having a 90% or 97% response to gunfire really changes that dynamic and also rebuilds trust in communities where they haven't seen a police response. So if I were to say there's one benefit overall, it's the saving lives and the trust and all that comes when you have a comprehensive response.
Stephanie, I think that I think they have slides that could answer a lot of these questions with images. So maybe it would be best to read them off and let Ron and
Yeah,
Terry put up whatever they
Sure.
like. So
let's do
I'll
that.
stop
And then,
sharing.
and then maybe what we can do is if we run out of time, we can also post answers to any questions that weren't addressed in the meeting. So that folks in the public can have an opportunity to review.
Absolutely. We've prepared those too, Stephanie.
So finishing on that point about the results, and again, I would invite anybody to go to this link. This is our website, soundthinking.com/ShotSpotter-public-safety-results. And you see, for example, overall response to gunfire. An independent review from Jillian Carr and Jennifer Doliak some years ago affirmed that only 12% of gunfire was coming in from a couple of cities that they reviewed, and measured that versus the 97% response that we've had over the past couple of years. Speed. First of all, the response time for most gunfire is never, because no one ever calls it in, but the 20% of the time they do, there's a contemplation period. Should you call the police? If you call, you get a call taker, then to a dispatcher. So we're seeing a 1.5 minute time in response to the event, and then getting people to a trauma center. And that was an independent study done at Cooper Health, where they showed several minutes saved in transporting victims. And again, mortality and morbidity, blood loss is all part of that factor. Then we see the speed of response to the scene. Excuse me. Spatial accuracy. Now, a recent study showed that the average call for 911 is 234 feet away. We've had other customers measure this out to 780 feet, 2.5 football fields. In Kansas City, it was a little bit closer, but that's still beyond what most police officers will have established for a radius for a crime scene, which means they're not going to find a victim, they're not going to find evidence, and so forth. The transport time, as I said, has improved. Evidence recovery. Independent studies from the Urban Institute showed a tremendous increase in forensic evidence, particularly like spent shell casings, where you can see going from 50 to 89% in homicide cases and less than 12 to over 41% in robbery cases after gunshot detection technology was implemented. And then several cases, and I'll go through these very quickly, on impacting gun violence. And we don't claim to be the only answer to here. We're a tool in the toolbox, but if used effectively, ShotSpotter can have profound results on gun violence. For example, Greenville, North Carolina, a 1/3 reduction in the first year of deployment. Chicago saw a 40% reduction in Englewood, which at the time was their most violent neighborhood. Cincinnati saw a 48% reduction in its most violent neighborhood, Avondale. Oakland had a 2/3 reduction per square mile when they deployed ShotSpotter. And then you see Fort Myers, these are reductions in homicides, 25%, West Palm Beach, 29%, San Diego, 32%, Miami, 35%, Pittsburgh, 36%, And again, many of these cities have expanded their original footprint, and Camden County, remarkably, a 46% reduction. And I don't want to run out of time before I address this quickly, because I know it's an important question, Jeff, if I may. I know I'm jumping to another question about
Go right ahead.
the value. I want everybody to understand ShotSpotter costs in your proposal less than $8 per hour per mile, $7.99. If you take the annual subscription rate per hour per mile, it's less than $8 an hour. Now, we can talk about what a life is worth, and that's perhaps very subjective, but I want to point to a study done independent of ShotSpotter. It was conducted by thecostofviolence.org. And this is the National Institute for Justice did this report. It's up on the website at that link. And they looked at several cities across the country, focusing particularly on Portland. And they looked at several objective, tangible costs, such as the crime scene management for the police, hospital costs for a victim, criminal justice costs for prosecution, incarceration, victim support, and lost revenue from sales tax. They looked at this in Portland. One homicide with one suspect costs $1.5 million. There's two suspects, as you can see here on this graphic, $3 million. A non-fatal shooting, about $780,000, and $1.5 million if there's two suspects. So again, this is objective data from an independent source, the NICJR, and you can go to that link that I shared and see this is the cost of gun violence, tangible, actual costs that ShotSpotter can help to address. And as I said, when you look at our cost of less than $8 per hour per mile, I think it's a pretty stark comparison. Other questions, Jeff, in the time we have?
Let's see. One that actually came up quite a bit in the written scoring evaluation was, will you explain the nature of the data collecting system, how long it's stored, who has access to the data, how, when, and to whom the data is made accessible?
So there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, everything that gets sent, and I just gave a brief demonstration of the data that we send to the PPB. In those slides you saw, they're getting information about the gunshot in real time. All that information is available. It is accessible to them. They can store it on their server in perpetuity. Let me go back to this here as a background. They can also take that data and download it into other off-the-shelf products like Microsoft Excel, Tableau, Google Earth, ArcGIS, and other tools. We keep the snippets. I'll just explain what I mean by that. When 3 or more sensors hear a loud impulsive sound, they snippet that audio, and those snippets are kept in perpetuity. So we have customers going back, as I said, the company's been in business 27 years. We have customers that have been with us for decades. We have all their data stored so they can access it, retrieve it. If they don't have it on their own server, they can come back to us to say, you know, we need that incident review for a prosecution. And so we have that available to them for as long as they're a subscribing customer. But what we're capturing is snippets of audio of gunshots. We're not taking protected data like HIPAA, CJIS data, nothing that's city-owned comes on our server. All we're taking is our audio snippets. It goes up to Amazon Web, RDS databases, and Mongo databases. It's all encrypted. We store that. There's no storage fee. It's all part of the subscription price, but it's accessible to our customers in perpetuity as long as they're a subscribing customer.
All right. I want to be cognizant of the time as well. So I'm going to jump around here a little bit. One of the last questions that was going to be for both vendors was community engagement with regard to the system and its impacts to citizens is important to the city. How is your company engaged with the communities of other municipal customers, and what is your plan for Portland?
Well, I think my colleague Paul John addressed that with the data for good, but let me expand on that just a little bit.
Please.
So in addition to the community engagement and impact team that Paul represents here with you tonight, we also have a customer success team. And they're all former law enforcement from ShotSpotter customer cities. Again, as they work as a team, think of them as consultants. We also have trainers on our team and analysts. And what they'll do as we deploy this within the police department and in the community for other stakeholders, we have a scope of services as an onboarding program that includes what best practices have we seen around the country, kind of pollinate them. Now, the policy for Portland will be bespoke. It'll be determined by your leadership in the city. We simply make suggestions on how we've seen other customers utilize the solution to its maximum value. But it's bespoke to your city, and you're certainly in control of how you use the solution. We'll train everybody in the agency. We'll train other stakeholders as needed. Communication personnel, detectives, patrol officers, and so forth. You define success. We help you build the metrics and key performance indicators for that success, including dashboards as needed. We maintain support as we go live. That means community meetings, media interviews, whatever you need from us on that regard. And then we stay with you as we go live, as we start the service, and we stay with you for ongoing consultative services. But I also want to talk, in addition to the community aspect that Paul spoke to in the Data for Good program, I also want to bring in a quick discussion about your prosecutors and giving you litigation support. In addition to what I showed earlier, the alerts that go to the responding law enforcement personnel, public safety personnel, ambulances, and so forth, we then provide a detailed forensic report, which is a very in-depth analysis of each acoustic event for the cases that go to trial, and we provide expert testimony as needed to support the prosecutor. And I don't have time to read this through, just give you quickly, I know this is being recorded, you can look back at it. This is a quote from a prosecutor that I think represents our relationship with prosecutors across our customer base about how valuable the tool has been for them. And he lists several ways that it's used in his jurisdiction, and that's from Hilla Moore from East Baton Rouge Parish in Louisiana. But I think his comments here speak to all of our relationships with our prosecutors as we've trained them, as we've trained community stakeholders. For example, in addition to what Paul recommended earlier, I'll just quickly touch on using this for street outreach programs. And this is something I'm very familiar with in my 2 previous employments as chief of police, where I've had ShotSpotter, using it for violence interrupters, street outreach, rather than being dispatched by anecdotal kind of street talk about where violence might occur. We can look at the ShotSpotter data, and they can be deployed much more effectively and efficiently. As with focused deterrence programs, understanding which groups may be the most violent based on ShotSpotter data, and doing specific call-ins or doing home visits for the deterrence. And then, as Paul eloquently talked about, trauma-informed care. So just give an example how that can work. Again, taking the clusters that we see and then sharing with your school officials to give them the proper services they deserve. So that just, I hope, answers the community aspect, but also wanted to elaborate on other stakeholders that we would engage in our training and our best practices.
All right, there's only one more question that was not answered, or that wasn't covered in the presentation, or that I don't think was. It was specific to your proposal. There were 2 different references to your system accuracy in the proposal. One was a graphic about the global gunshot detection leader had an accuracy of 97%. And then in the service level agreement, it listed a 90% accuracy. Can you explain that discrepancy, please?
So I don't consider it a discrepancy. Here's the difference.
The difference, right?
A service level agreement is a contractual guarantee. We promise to deliver to you 90% notification of external unsuppressed gunfire. So that's a promise. Now, I'd say we promise low and deliver high, because an outside research firm looked at our performance across our customer base and said we're actually performing at 97%. So my clumsy analogy, you buy a car, it has a warranty for X number of miles. Do you expect the car to just die at that mileage? No, you're going to expect it to go beyond that, but you're guaranteed and warranted a certain level of performance from a refrigerator, from a toaster, from a vehicle you buy. So our warranty is at 90%, but we exceed that to 97%. I hope
That's
that
good
explains the
analogy.
difference in the math.
Thank you. Stephanie, that covers the question. So do you want to take over?
Yeah, that's great. I will move into the questions that we've got in the Q&A so that we can try to get through as many of those as possible. And I think we have about, I think we can do this in about, we'll say 8 minutes so that we have given enough time. But one of the questions I see here is, how do you calculate the false positive rate?
So that rate is dependent upon customer feedback. We don't know if we send law enforcement, public safety on a reviewed alert, if it is in fact gunfire, until they tell us otherwise. So the understanding is there's a presumption that it's gunfire, but if they get to the scene, and our term is ground truth, if they get there and there's firework debris, if they get there and there's a witness that said, no, it was something else, then we'll consider that a false positive. And since our guarantees are encouraged, we train our customers to give us the feedback. We're open 24/7, 365 for email, chat, and phone response. We encourage that feedback so that our reviewers are trained better, that our algorithms are improved, and there's liquidated damages in the contract if we don't perform at those levels. We want that kind of feedback. And despite the fact that we have all those feedback channels, the last couple of years, we've had a false positive rate of just 0.5%. We're extremely accurate at determining, is that acoustic event gunfire or not?
We also provide monthly report cards to our customers if they'd like to receive it, for all the stakeholders that are involved, just tracking how we're performing each month. And that's above and beyond the annual review that we do and all of the customer success aspects that Ron explained earlier.
Right. Great point, Terry. Thank you.
Next question I'll jump to is, what is the nature of the acoustic sensors? Are they microphones? Doesn't this technology infringe on citizens' constitutional right to protection from unreasonable search and seizure by the government?
So the sensor, and I'll quote our CEO, Ralph Clark, is about the size of a 2-slice toaster. We mount them high on rooftops of buildings and then on utility poles. They're designed, first of all, the microphone that's in there is no more sophisticated than what's in your cell phone. We don't have this big radar screen that we're picking up voices from a block away. It's a very, very low quality microphone. But the purpose of this sensor is to listen for this impulsive loud events and then stamp it such that, if you have 3 or 4 more sensors, and it requires at least 3 or 4 to all hear that same acoustic event before they record the actual noise. They record that acoustic event. It is self-erasing, so that if it doesn't take the snippet and record that on our server, then it falls off. We're not capturing conversations. In fact, I'll say 2 things on that point real quick. First of all, we proactively engaged the New York University School of Law Policing Project to come in, look at our procedures, and they gave us an outstanding review and said they have very little concern about any kind of voice surveillance. That's not what we do. We did change some protocols at their suggestion. We've also been reviewed by the Oakland Privacy Commission, and they've given us unanimous support to renew their contract. Similarly, we've been reviewed in San Francisco and across our customer base. We're not hearing conversations. We're not recording conversations. We're not infringing on people's privacy, and we're not violating their constitutional rights. We're very concerned about their liberties, which is why we took the proactive step as we did with NYU School of Law.
Thanks. I'm going to jump to another question. What community-based organizations in Portland have you reached out to about partnership? And another question I'm combining here is, what does community engagement and outreach look like to you?
So I'm going to defer to Paul on this one. Paul?
Yeah. Yep. On the latter, I think community engagement to me means providing a more holistic approach to reducing and potentially ending gun violence in the long run. We understand that ShotSpotter is just a tool to address gun violence, in tandem with all of the other tools that the city wants to use and implement to reduce gun violence too. And at ShotSpotter, we want to make sure that we are not only providing data for the police department, but for the other civic stakeholders that may also be working to address gun violence. Now, we determine who those stakeholders are after a ShotSpotter contract is signed, so that we know exactly where we should be going and which specific areas of the city are being covered, because certain services are more specific to certain specific coverage areas than others are. I think some are citywide, countywide, statewide, but there are other more local community stakeholders and organizations that can work with the police department and with ShotSpotter to better determine where to deploy their resources, including violence interrupters, the Department of Public Health, school-based handle with care programs, and others that I mentioned earlier. So that's what community engagement looks like to me. And that's the kind of community engagement we want to bring to Portland. And of course, provide that holistic approach to addressing gun violence.
Thank you. I'm trying to get to as many questions as I can. Is your organization staffed primarily by ex-law enforcement people like yourself? I assume, meaning Ron.
No, actually, I think we're about a 200 employee organization now with the expansion of our solutions. Most of the folks are engineers, scientists. The law enforcement, other than myself on the solutions team, a couple others retired law enforcement on what we call the solutions team that have subject matter familiarity. The customer success team and the community engagement team is where we see most of our law enforcement, particularly the customer success. About 7 or 8 folks who've come from law enforcement, working with our law enforcement customers, helping introduce the solution, share those best practices, kind of be like a personal trainer as you would at a health center, and give that coaching and that advice. But again, I want to stress, the protocols, the best practices are all suggested, but the policy and the strategy is unique to that department, and it's based on its capacity, and it's the chief or a sheriff, depending on the customer, who decides on the policy. But the law enforcement, I'd say we're very much in the minority within Sound Thinking or within ShotSpotter.
Thank you. I think we've got just about 1 more minute, and I will get to, sorry, I had a question up and then it jumped away on me. All right. So this is a question that says, a lot of the claims you're making are contradicted by the cities that have had ShotSpotter. San Diego, Dayton, San Antonio, Charlotte, Trenton, and Atlanta have all rejected ShotSpotter. And now one of your biggest clients, Chicago, might also drop ShotSpotter. Why would Portland's experience be any different than those cities?
Well, first of all, I think you just listed maybe a handful, 5 or 6 cities. Compare that to the 150 that we have with a 99% retention rate. I can speak to a couple of those. Chicago is still in discussion. San Diego only took a pause because of an ordinance that was passed. They're setting up a privacy board. They wanted to review this, so we were on pause with them. I wouldn't say it was a rejection. Dayton has discontinued the service, but said ShotSpotter does work. They had some concerns about legislation in Ohio, and they're reviewing our practice now in light of that legislation. So I would say they're subject to recovery as well. Again, 3 or 4 cities that have discontinued service. I don't call that a rejection. It could be a change of administration, other financial considerations. There are various reasons why people don't renew, but 99% retention rate across our customer base the last 3 years, I would say that's pretty phenomenal in this technology public safety space.
All right, we are right on time. And I want to let everyone know in the chat, we're tracking all of the Q&A. We will work to get answers to these. Just want to make sure that we are running on time here and that we've given equal time to both presenters. So with that, I will say thank you to the folks at ShotSpotter for your presentation. And we will hand it over to the folks from Eagle.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Joe Swan, I'm with GMI. I just want to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to present to you today. I want to make it clear that Eagle Technologies, the gunshot detection technology, does not sell direct to its customers. They use technology vendors such as GMI to rely on that partnership to sell to the public. And so that is my involvement with this call today, just so that everyone knows GMI is representing Eagle on this call. I live local here in Canby, so I'm part of the community, just like others on the call here. And I will turn it over to Chuck Freiberg with Eagle Technologies to give an overview of the product.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Freiberg. I'm from Eagle Technology. We're out of Albuquerque. I'm in Minneapolis, if you couldn't tell by the accent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a quick presentation. That's a PowerPoint. I promise to keep it extremely quick. It should answer most of the questions that were proposed to us. And, you know, we're definitely open to the community feedback. The more, the better. We can answer anything. So can I share my screen? Okay, I got the power. So about Eagle Technology, we've been around since 2015. Our energy sensor, which is different than a microphone as been discussed this evening, is contained in a box about this big, looks like a double stacked smoke detector from the 80s. Our core technology is actually where we shine. So Eagle, EAGL, stands for emergency gun lock or gunshot lockdown. And that's what our system is. So our core, our focus is on how do we handle the responses when an emergency happens. So you'll see that we're focused on the community and how to get the proper resources to whatever emergency event takes place. We are not just gunshot. We do a lot of other things as well when it comes to our sensors and our technology. We're big focus in schools, big focus in healthcare because microphones, there's sensors inside here. We don't have illegal search and seizure issues with our tech. That isn't even, our tech isn't capable of that. So we have 2 patents that we work off of. One of them is our adaptive response. The other one is a transfer that came from PNNL up in the Pacific Northwest over there in Washington State. We are Safety Act designated. So the Department of Homeland Security has vetted us out. And what happens is that if there's a terror attack, there's an equipment failure where this technology doesn't work, the people that select this technology are indemnified from the damages that can happen in a lawsuit. At the end, and I could push this presentation out to the people on the presentation here, and the Safety Act is at the end of the what those requirements are at the end of the presentation, or you can go to the URL that's right here. So what happens with our system is we detect an incident using AI on board on these self-contained sensors. We determine whether it's likely a gunshot at that point. We then push that data packet, not an audio packet, out to our servers, and then that server makes a final decision whether or not it believes that it's a gunshot. Our indoor sensor technology, we are over 99% accurate, and our outdoors, which is what we're talking about here this evening, is over 95%. Once the response happens, it's relatively quick. I will show you in a couple seconds how fast it is. It is approximately 2 to 3 seconds in real time. And then once that response comes back positive, our adaptive response allows Portland to configure how they would like to handle that action thereafter. So for example, gunshots detected, comes into the police department, for example, the police department determines that is something that they need to dispatch. You can dispatch the police department from the CAD. We can also push out to, say, local hospitals, any community organizing group. We've been speaking with a FitCog in the past, for example. We could push that there's community services that are needed at a specific location. Obviously, you want to take some caution with that. You don't want to send out the people before the police secure that zone, but you want to have all of those resources readily available. We have a interface that is very friendly to who's ever looking at it. So it shows real time where that incident happened. Our system, when it comes to triangulation, works differently than a lot of our competitors that are out there. One of the key drivers, or one of the way that we triangulate, is we use the quality and quantity of energy received at all sensors that are activated at the time. So when that energy comes in, there's a signature, there's a certain level amount, we score it. And then what we do is we triangulate based on how much energy is received at A, B, and C. And if there's less dissipated out farther from the incident, say it's 500 feet versus 200 feet and 100 feet, we could triangulate sub 10 feet. One of the important things, say here in the Midwest, is we're finally finishing up winter. If somebody was shot and you're off by, I've heard some incidents of 1,600 meters in the past from some other cities. That's a very large radius to be looking for somebody who may be bleeding out in real time. So, okay. If you notice here, can everybody see my camera yet? I'm going to activate this. I have this in our test mode. This is our indoor sensor. So once that goes red and stops red, there we go. That's how fast the gunshot response is. Doesn't need to go to a call center. AI drives the likelihood of it being a gunshot. Same thing. Simulator here. This is what our outdoor sensors look like. That's how fast our system is. No opinions needed. No one on call center to train. Integration, sorry. System normal, there we go. Integration, we integrate with most API or with most systems that are out there, since most everybody's running an API system these days. We could push into E911. We can go into access control. For example, if you have schools that are in the area and there's a gunshot that happens to take place out on the street, we can notify that school and we could actually lock that school down so that the building is secure from the outside. We could actually trigger their PA system if they wanted. We can send those principals and those staff that there's a gunshot incident out in the area. I saw something about, I thought it was a lacrosse game that took place where somebody's got their kids shot up, or a car or something like that. So these incidents that happen out on the street, we can send out the appropriate alerts to people that are in that area so people can evade and take care of themselves. So our tech, we have more than just outdoor. We've got the indoor, like I said here. We also have the ability to bring transit into the mix as well. So if you're looking to protect your public buses, your any kind of light rail you might have, even an Uber driver, we've got a solution for them. That one, for example, is hardwired into their vehicle. If a gunshot happens, you get a real-time GPS as to where that piece of equipment is at, how fast it's going, where it's going. If somebody's taking it over, for example, if the police need to do whatever they do, you can get that running there. Blue fly is something that can be worn by, say, a school resource officer or a patrol officer or a security guard. This outdoor sensor right here, the Dragonfly, that is right here. This is what it looks like. It's all self-contained, battery powered. It's also solar powered as well. Our batteries in these last 7 to 9 years. When it comes to the install, there's no need for telecom to be run up to it. There's no need for power to be run up to it. These things are able to be moved to whatever location the city of Portland feels as though they need to be moved. So if you have an extremely violent area for a while, and this happens to curb that violence that's happening there, and you want to move it over to another area, just literally get on the internet, drop and drag those icons and put them in their new place. This has recently been updated, our radius as far as our effective range goes. For a pistol, we're at 500 feet for detection. And for rifles, we're up to 1,000 foot for our range there. So we really expanded how far we can detect these outdoor sensors or outdoor incidents. That's a 4-fastener install and it's up and running. I would say typically speaking, it's going to take longer to put the boom truck in place, put down the outriggers and get that boom up than it is to actually install the device. We use LoRa, which is a low frequency Wi-Fi, or there's an IoT/4G option. Chances are the city of Portland would be an IoT application from what we've seen. So just to give you an idea, to put to rest some of this microphone versus sensor stuff I've seen in the chat that's happened this evening. A sensor only has 2 purposes, and that's to measure the quality and the quantity of energy at a specific time. Our tech is always dormant. That's why this right here in an indoor setting, for example, without solar, we can get 5 years of service out of the batteries that are in here. They look like a D-cell battery that's inside there. If this was always on, these batteries would last less than a month or less than a week, excuse me. Microphones on the other side of the mix here, they're always on, they're always listening, there's always transmitting. It's a hot mic. You start to run into privacy issues. They're always fed into a third-party system. One of the things that comes up as well is, can somebody nefariously listen to your system? No, there's a sensor. It's not a microphone. The sensor is a high-quality sensor built by the Department of Energy, but it has no other purposes other than to gauge that energy at that time of an incident. So this is what that energy looks like. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. I wanted to explain this as well. So we work off of 3 pieces here. So we work off of this recompression shock, which can be audible or inaudible, depending if there's a suppressor on a weapon. If anybody saw the news story that we were featured on here about 3 months ago, there was one of the shots was we were using a suppressed weapon out there. We will capture those incidents because we don't need sound to have an opinion on whether something happened or not. And then we also measure this forward angle on that projectile, as well as this wake. This wake right here is what sets off an energy signature, which is the voltage that we measure. So everything needs to fall within our parameters of our algorithms. So this is what a couple of different things look like. We hear this often in schools, for example. What if somebody drops a book on the floor, slams a door, the marching band goes through the hallway or whatever? Those things all give off significantly different signatures than a gunshot does. So this is that voltage that comes off of the tail, very distinct. Thunder versus a firearm right here. We did a pride parade down in Orlando back in December. Commercial fireworks were going off for about 45 minutes, not one false positive. This is the classification threshold. So when we put these into the community, we take that acoustic energy that's in the area and we put everything into a learn mode for 2 weeks. We set the thresholds down to 0 so we can learn the energy level that's in that area. And then we adjust that to the point where we start to pick up everything that's above a 22 caliber up to an AK-47 type of round, and we can go above that as well. So shotguns, whatever that happens to be. What differentiates us from everybody else that's out in the marketplace? The Safety Act designation. We're the only ones that have indoor, outdoor, body worn, and transit. We're an energy sensor company. We are green energy compliant. Department of Energy built it, so we meet those standards. We're battery and solar powered. We're portable, so you can have something in one area at one time of the year and move it to another. So for example, a baseball field versus a football field or a hockey rink or whatever. We have the ability to put in 4G or use LoRa. All of our analysis is not opinion-based. It is scientifically proven with the sensor in here through AI. And like I said, we go through a machine learning adaptation period. We have an open API architecture in the background. And then we are the lowest total cost of ownership in the industry. So I am done with my presentation part. And I would like to open this up for questions, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen if I can figure that out.
Stephanie, would you like me to read through the questions for the?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, Chuck, I'm going to go through the questions that we sent to you last week, and we'll just go through them from the start one by one, and then you go ahead and answer as you will. If you need to share something, that's fine. The first question is, what overall effects have other municipal customers found in their community after integrating the gunshot detection system?
So our primary market's a private sector, and it's a mix of indoor and outdoor. So at the municipal level, we're not in 150 locations. We've got several pilots going on throughout the city here or throughout the country. I don't know if Jen's on the call or not, but she could rattle off a few of the places that we're currently active in.
Okay. Next question. Can you provide a cost benefit analysis for integration of the system? Is there data related to gun violence reduction that can be shared to verify the cost benefit? Is there data related to an increased conviction rate amongst criminal perpetrators of gun violence?
So we do have a couple of times where we've caught some people. One of them was in the Chicago area. There was some gang violence that happened. It included a pizza, which also included an arrest. When it comes to the cost benefit analysis, I'm not going to get into the whole discussion of what's a life worth, but I can tell you what the hard costs are on our system. We're looking at $2,200 a system. The proposed area, the one-time cost would be for 150 sensors. And then there's an annual subscription fee that goes with that. It is approximately just a little under $200 per sensor annually.
All right, thank you. The next question is, what's the detection range of your system sensors? If you want to elaborate on that, but
Yeah.
covered.
So with a pistol, like a 9mm, which is a typical used caliber, that's a 500-foot radius with our outdoor sensors. And we actually exceed that, but that's our published rate. And with a rifle, we're at 1,000. And by the way, that's 500 foot with a suppressor with the pistol. And then we're at 1,000 feet supersonic with a rifle, a typical rifle.
Thank you. Next question is integration into CAD system, CAD system. What has been the result of other municipalities integrating the system into their emergency responses? What have the effects to response time been, good or bad? What data can be provided to verify these effects?
So we could get you some of that information afterwards here. Our system is API based, so the architecture that would take us as an input into their current CAD system is one of those things that we just hand to the city of Portland. And what the city of Portland wants to do with that is on them. So we don't require an additional app running in the background or another system to be utilized. We can be a silent partner in the back end that hands the city those responses from our technology.
Next question, equipment and installation cost. Who is responsible for costs related to installation of the system devices? Who's responsible for costs related to software interface development? Is your system already able to integrate with city's emergency response dispatch system?
So Joe, do you mind getting on here and kind of explaining how GMI handles that? That is post OEM on myself. I don't want to speak in Joe's behalf.
Yeah, I mean, in our proposal, we included integration costs to integrate with Portland's CAD. As far as maintenance and continual upkeep of that is also included in the service agreement cost per sensor. So if something is defective or batteries are having issues, that GMI will be partner with the city of Portland to remedy those things.
All right. Maintenance cost, who's responsible for replacing damaged equipment? And what are the replacement costs for the detection devices and related hardware?
Joe?
Well, if say somebody, takes a sensor down, a community member, the customer, City of Portland would be liable to replace that sensor. And like Chuck alluded to earlier, MSRP per sensor is $2,200.
All right. Next question, city retention of data could be up to 50 years or more. Please explain data retention in your system, who owns the data, and the cost of long-term storage if stored on devices.
Absolutely. So the reports are your reports. What your data retention policy is we hand you a CSV file and you'd be responsible for keeping that in whatever manner that you do. So that those reports are available within probably a half a second of the incident. So your 50-year retention is not an issue.
Okay, thank you. Next question, privacy. How do you ensure data collected by your system remains private?
We do not collect any audible information. We give an alphanumeric response as far as how our incidents look. So those aren't able to be, like, I can't bring in a sound bite into court and say, here's the sound of that gunshot that happened. We can say, here's the energy sensor that was activated. This fits our parameters, this fits our algorithm, but we can't produce an audio file. So we don't have any privacy issues that can be breached.
Thank you. Community engagement with regard to this system and its impacts to citizens is important to the city. How has your company engaged with the communities of other municipal customers, and what is your plan for Portland?
Go ahead,
And
Joe.
you did say you don't have a lot of municipal customers, so you can talk to the private customers.
Oh yeah, private. I'll let Joe talk about the community involvement that they plan on doing from GMI here, and then I'll answer the rest of it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, GMI and Eagle believe in making a difference, not just for the customers, but for the community. Like I said before, I'm local. I live in Canby, Oregon. I've been in Oregon for 34 years. I have 3 young daughters that I have vested interest in being part of a safer community and providing support from a local involvement and standpoint. We want to ensure resources are deployed in a timely manner to save lives in our community. We're not, here to say that City of Portland making a decision on Eagle will reduce gun violence in any manner, but we want to stand on that we will deploy, give the resources to the City of Portland to deploy in a timely manner in under 5 seconds to get resources rolling, including EMS and other stakeholders. And we provide data that is accurate enough so basically it's evidence-based decisions for the City of Portland. And we think that those type of data supports the community from that standpoint, sorry. And then just to go elaborate more on that, both Chuck and I have been engaged with stakeholders and community members in the city for the past 12 months. We've been an active participant in the IPAC meetings and FitCog meetings, as well as engaging community leaders, including like Portland Police Bureau, neighboring municipalities, Go Get Your Child, Community Violence Prevention Coalition, and other community activists. We've spent many hours with community members getting their perspective on what's going on with Portland, and we have been heavily involved with them. GMI is an organization. We support many different charitable organizations that help accomplish their missions. A few supported organizations that GMI supports is American Cancer Society, the Red Cross, Salvation Army, St. Mary's Food Bank. And so GMI is fully committed to being engaged with the community and the services in the cities that we service and our clients of ours.
Okay, Jeff, what pieces do I need to fill in there from a private entity perspective? Did I miss anything, or did Joe miss anything?
The first part of the question is, how is your company engaged with communities with your other customers, essentially? Yeah,
so since we're an OEM, it's kind of like how if you were to go buy a vehicle, we're responsible for the manufacturing and the ongoing back end support, like the software support and those types of things. And GMI is our dealership, so they're the face of us in every community. So we've got a lot of stuff cooking with GMI throughout the country right now, especially in the Western US where I cover. When it comes into the private entities, I don't get any pushback at my level because our dealer network is really solid. So, we've got some stuff every now and then that we have to deal with, which is pretty typical. Somebody drops one of these sensors off of a ceiling, or windstorm knocks it down because it wasn't secured properly, and we have to send out replacements. So, one of the beauties of having a dealer network and versus going direct is that we have a lot of force multipliers out there that can go out and give the communities and the businesses the support that they need. And those businesses and communities can make the decision with their checkbook and decide whether or not they want to continue to do business with them, us, or go get another dealer, or maybe even a different provider.
All right, thank you. Stephanie, there were two other questions, but they were covered in detail during the initial presentation and in the slides. So I think we're good with those questions.
Great.
If you want to open it up for the public.
Terrific. I'll jump into our Q&A here. One question that I have seen a couple of times, Chuck, is a question about what cities Eagle is in a municipal sense. Can you speak to the cities that you are working with, even though they're maybe a minority of your business?
Yeah, so I'm not going to disclose obviously my prospect list because I don't need ShotSpotter or Sound Decision or whatever they're called going in and soliciting my people. If you don't mind, I would like to get that list from internal and get that out to you, and so you can post that on the mayor's website. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Another question I want to follow up on. You talked about the ease of providing data to the city, but can you speak a little bit more to what happens on your end once you provide that data? Is it destroyed? Is it ever sold? Can you just speak to that piece of it?
Yeah, no, we are not in that business whatsoever. So that data that comes to your servers that the city owns. The city is the sole proprietor of that information right there. We don't have access to it. We can't see it. The only way we'd be able to see it is if we had a remote login and we could get into the server farm that wherever you're hosting this. If we needed to do some maintenance or something like that, that would we don't hold it hostage. We don't sell it. We don't have access to it. That is a city of Portland's property.
Thank you. Another question I see here is, does Eagle use IMSI catchers?
IMSI patch? IMSI?
Yeah.
IMSI.
IMSI
Yeah.
catcher. Yeah.
IMSI catchers? No, we don't have IMSI catchers.
There was a link in the chat to a story in the Albuquerque Journal that I think gave the impression that you did. So it sounds like this technology does not capture mobile device information.
No. So what can happen? Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
GMI partners with another manufacturer that does provide IMSI catchers that can collect cell phone data in the event for investigative uses. Much like cities use today, what they refer to as a cell tower dump, which gathers thousands of cell phone IMEIs in the area. These IMSI catchers localize that. And for instance, we're working with an agency in the Washington area that is choosing to use this to fight crime in their city. But that is a city by city basis. We know that Portland has no interest in the IMSI catcher. We've not proposed that.
That is not something we provide. We partner with various companies that want to use our Eagle as a platform, and that could be an IMSI catcher, that could be, cameras, whatever. But we are not an OEM for any of that gear, just the sensors and the panic buttons and stuff similar to that.
Thank you. Next question. ShotSpotter has a long record which experts, city officials, and media across the country have scrutinized, but Eagle isn't in a lot of big cities. Why should Portland take a chance on a company whose performance and record is so limited and unknown?
Well, our reliability is what it is. We're sub 5% as far as the defect rate goes when it comes to gunshot detected outdoors. You know, a 27-year-old car, it's probably a pretty good car, but it's nice to get a new car every now and then too, right? So technology evolves over time. There's a thing called Moore's Law. Every 18 months, technology doubles for the same cost. When you start taking a look at, you know, how does this fit the needs of Portland from a privacy perspective and a reliability perspective? There's zero doubt that Eagle is the appropriate selection here.
Thanks. Next question is regarding open API for the Eagle system. How would you expect the city or community to use that API, and how has that API been used elsewhere?
It would just depend on what the city wants to do as far as technology goes. What other inputs they might want to put into Eagle. My understanding is that the city of Portland already has all of the systems in place that they need to operate like a real-time crime center or whatever from a police bureau perspective. We are just one of the inputs into that system. Our Eagle platform itself can function as a core product, but that's typically in a smaller municipal or a school that doesn't have any other infrastructure there. So we wouldn't be helping drive any of that stuff, but the thing that we wouldn't be is an adverse like partner in that regard. So we're not going to stop something from happening when it comes to an API. So this decision to do other things with APIs wouldn't be something that we drive. So essentially, to put it kind of a little more clear, probably is confusing there, we are acting as an input into the existing infrastructure that Portland's already using. We won't be the infrastructure, so we'll be a feature.
Great. There was a question regarding whether any of your data has been used as evidence in court. It sounds like from one of your answers, it's not intended for that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Can you clarify the question a little more,
Sure.
please? Yeah.
So we have a question about asking whether Eagle data or the service that you're providing has been introduced in a court case that you're aware of. Can you answer that?
So our input into the court system would be the results of the algorithms that the system produced. So there wouldn't be an audio file that would show up. I mean, if everybody has a couple seconds, I could show you what those files look like. I'll share my screen quick. Okay. I mean, display all results. Right. Oh, sorry.
Chuck, while you're doing that, I see something in the chat that says, what's the difference between Eagle, GMI, and ShotSpotter? I opened this discussion up today with ShotSpotter sells direct to the customers. Eagle does not. Eagle does not sell direct to their clients, so they have essentially resellers nationwide that provide the services and sell the product.
And I'll add to that question, Joe. There was a question asking whether Eagle technology triangulates the location of shots, similar to what ShotSpotter does. If somebody could speak to that, please.
Sure. So our triangulation works differently than audio-based systems. Our system, let's say GMT drifts, for example, by 10, 20, 30 milliseconds. And if you're talking about a projectile that's flying through the air at 1,200 foot per second or 3,000 feet per second, that might not sound like 10 milliseconds would make much of a difference, but you could be plotted off the wrong, off the right spot by 200 to 500 feet really quick. If I look at the neighborhood that I live in, that could be a block or two over. And if you're an EMS person driving around in an ambulance looking for somebody that may be wounded, you're going to have a tough time. So what our system does is we will take, for example, 3 locations that our sensors are fixed at. We will take a look at the energy received at point A, energy received at point B, energy received at point C, see what that difference is between A, B, and C, and we will take those energy pieces and triangulate that to sub 10 feet. I don't know, is that an understandable response, Stephanie?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, I'll invite our members of the public to add a question if they want to follow up on that.
Okay.
I will move to the next question. That question says, if Eagle isn't willing to disclose their municipal clients, can they speak to how deployment would look specifically in an urban environment such as Portland, and what their efficacy in such environments has been thus far?
So I can speak about some of the other areas that are have high-rise buildings, for example, that can be tricky when it gets to the acoustics. And if you're just working off of a microphone, high-rise buildings, lots of glass, lots of asphalt, lots of sound bouncing off of everything, right? So it's hard to differentiate if it's on this block or 7 blocks down the street. Since we take that energy level, we can operate just fine in an extremely noisy area, as well as a very acoustically loud area, I guess you could call it. So a tunnel, for example, we can triangulate in that, no problem. That would be one of the biggest nightmares when it comes to triangulation. So, you know, we're here to serve Portland, whatever Portland wants us to do as far as what this deployment looks like. Your city is what's driving those decisions, not us. We can give you some feedback and some suggestions, but it looks like Portland already has that figured out just fine.
It looks like I've got a question here asking for some elaboration on what makes Eagle's sensor-based tech more reliable or as reliable as microphone-based tech.
So we don't use someone's opinion in a call center that's been trained for 4 times or whatever it was. We use those 3 pieces. So we use the recompression shock, the wake, and the angle of the projectile on the front. So we use math and science to dictate whether we believe that to be an actual gunshot or not. You could probably, like, I'll give you an example. My son, he is a nightmare when it comes to how his car is. So he has what's called a gunshot tune put in his vehicle. He drives down the street, takes his foot off the accelerator. You hear pop, 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 pop. It's very hard to distinguish whether that is a gunshot or not. I was in the Army for 8 years. Let's just say it's pretty tough for me to differentiate whether that was a gunfire or not. They're that realistic these days. So we don't have those issues. His BMW does not shoot a projectile out the rear of his tailpipe. He'd probably think that's pretty cool though, unfortunately, because he's 19.
One more request for some elaboration, just with regard to information developed by your sensors being used in court. Just to clarify, are you aware of any cases that it was used or not aware of any cases?
I know one for sure. I'll have to get Jen to get us that information as to what that is. And I don't know what the others would be. I'm relatively new at Eagle, by the way.
Great. Well, I'm looking through. There are other questions here that are directed not to the presenters, but to the city. And so I want to make sure that we've given, equal time to both presenters tonight so that the public can ask questions of the presenters. While we wait for maybe some more questions, I think what I will say is that just to give an overview, again, this particular forum is intended to be part of the RFP process, which determines which proposer would score the highest if the city were to move forward with a gunshot detection system. So this forum is not about the question of whether it would move forward. This is more about allowing the community to ask questions about the technology that's being considered. I will say that, you know, we are at the city, we're working on doing community engagement on this. We've attended prior public meetings on this. We also have a survey that is being analyzed right now by folks at Portland State looking for feedback on this, and all of that feedback is going to be, you know, helpful to inform City Council as to whether or not they would like to proceed. So I want to make that clear, but for purposes of tonight, this is really about having your questions about the companies and their technology answered. I'm going to just go back through and make sure that I haven't missed anything that's a question for our presenters. It looks like there was a question, and I think it may be difficult to tie back into your presentation specifically, but there was a question about whether you can, let me get it in front of me. If you, Chuck, could clarify some of the studies that you mentioned early in your presentation, and maybe either cite to those or elaborate a little bit on who conducted them and where they can be accessed by the public.
Our what, Stephanie?
Chuck, I think she's asking for the PNNL testing that happened over 12 months routinely.
Oh yeah, we've got some white papers that we can send. It's like 112 pages, I think. Of it's, you know, this was developed by PNNL up in the Pacific Northwest. So we do have their results that supports the, you know, the results that we get out of our data here.
We can send that over to the panel
Yeah,
as well.
that's no problem. We actually dropped those down from what PNNL publishes, by the way.
Great. A follow-up question on the example you gave a moment ago about the car, Chuck. Can this tech tell the difference between those noises made by cars and an actual gunshot?
Yes, absolutely. The big thing is that we need that projectile flying through the air for most of the decisions. If this was on the back side, like in the alley behind my house, and enough acoustic energy hit the sensor, we would pick that up, but it still has to fit the algorithm in the right way. So you know, commercial fireworks, that's pretty tricky. You know, I can tell you this as let's just say that the Pride Parade down in Orlando, I think, is a great example of no false positives. And that was 40 minutes of chaos.
Right. Well, I don't see any additional questions right now for our presenters. I do see that there's a question about whether or not there will be another forum. As of right now, there's not scheduled to be another forum, but again, the collection of feedback and information will certainly inform next steps. If council proceeds with the pilot program of gunshot detection, then that would be presented in council, and there would be opportunity for public testimony related to something like that. And we can discuss whether or not an additional public forum would be scheduled at that time. But as of right now, there's not another forum specifically for this. Again, this is specific to the RFP process. Well, I don't see any other questions for this presenter. I guess, Jeff, thoughts on how to move along?
I just want to make a comment. We really appreciate being invited to be able to bid on this and be part of this. This has been a very big eye opener working with the people, especially in the FitCog group, and hearing those stories of how gun violence has affected Portland. And we hope to be a good partner to help curb some of that stuff for you guys over there and bring public safety, you know, up to the point where it should be for you guys. So thank you.
We did just get one additional follow-up that I'll
perfect.
that
All right.
squeaked in. So this says, since we have the time, can you expand on the studies that you were mentioning? Were those studies?
Are you saying studies or settings?
Studies?
Studies?
Yes.
Is there anything specific? I can tell the difference between.
The studies that we're referencing is from the actual lab that was testing this technology, not in the city deployment.
So, hey, Stephanie, is it okay if I bring up one of those screens or one of my presentations I can show? Okay. It's one thing to hear it, it's another to see it. I'm a visual guy myself. All right, oops, where we get that? There we go. Okay. So one of the things that I think is pretty difficult for me to wrap my head around when I first started here is the way that we measure whether something is true or not is each projectile's got an angle in the front here. So we measure this angle on this expansion wave right here. We also measure this recompression shock, which can be audible or it could be suppressed. So one of the things I was waiting for a question was, can you grab suppressed weapons? Yes, we can, because we measure this bow right here. We also measure this recompression shock wave and the wake. This wake right here is what gives us that voltage that we're looking at, which is in this next slide right here. So we've analyzed this voltage right here, and it's a few milliseconds, and then that's enough data to give us the positive results there. That's why when I clicked on my tester here, it, and I put it in test mode, by the way, so you can't go around with one of these dog trainers and go around and trigger these within the city. If you take a look at, here's a notebook that was smacked on the floor. That's the energy signature that came off of that. Here is a bag pop. So somebody smacked a bag. That's what that looks like as far as the energy waves go, the acoustic waves that are there. This is what, there's a lot of gun violence right now going on with 9mm. So we know what those energy amounts are with our algorithms. And so those are significantly different than what you would see from like a gunshot tune on a vehicle. So this is how thunder looks. We've got a lot of other examples. And if anybody would really like to pull up in here, or just give you guys this right here. So here's our patent right here. That's we're working off of. If you want to see some of the white papers and some of the information that's listed in there, that's the patent to pull up right there. If you are looking to, if you have some insomnia, it's a great way to put yourself to sleep.
So while I've been talking, we've had some good follow-ups, and it sounds like from a couple of folks, there is concern about whether your technology has been tested in the field or only in a lab.
No. Yes. Out and about. Yeah. So, and I'll give you what a typical deployment looks like up to this point. I mean, we have some city stuff, but we're not, we haven't been around forever. Typically speaking, what we do, let's say we go into a hospital, we'll deploy in all the major hallways, all the public entrances, and then we'll also put coverage outside. So leading up to that front door, which is typically an outdoor sensor, or if there's, some of these awnings or whatever, we may put an indoor one there depending on what everything looks like. And then we'll often cover the parking ramps and or open parking lot with our outdoor sensors. So we do have outdoor deployments, but if you're like, hey, give me a list of 50 cities that you're in, we're not going to produce that, but we'll get you a few of them.
And another question here is asking, what is the largest outdoor coverage area where Eagle's deployed right now?
I have to get back on that one. I'm not sure what it is.
And just to clarify, when you're talking about the question that you've mentioned, you can provide some information on what cities Eagle is working with in a municipal sense. Did I just hear you saying that you can provide some of them, but you're not comfortable providing all of them? I'll
get with Jen tomorrow and I'll email you who those are, so you can put it up on the public site.
Great. But to clarify, it will be all of them, or will it be select cities from
We
the
can give
ones
you a
that-
few, yeah. We don't want to publish a hit list for ShotSpotter to go out and knock on the door.
It sounds like one question here. So there's no independent study demonstrating Eagle's accuracy in an outdoor setting. Is that accurate?
True.
And I'm also getting a request if you could clarify when you're talking about not wanting to provide a hit list for ShotSpotter. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Oh, sure. I didn't mean it in a mafia type of sense. Yeah, jokes are heavy this time of night here. Yeah, no, we'll get you some municipals that will show that we've done work outdoors in the public. You know, we don't want to be listing off for private company, you know, our client list. And oftentimes too, these clients don't want the public to know that they've deployed this system, because one of the things that'll happen in this industry is somebody's going to go out and see if they can breach the technology. And, you know, we don't want to be putting out a public challenge, I guess you could say.
All right. Another question, is there any research related to police behavior in response to Eagle initiated deployments?
No, our focus is on public safety. You know, we're not driven by police decisions. The PPB is going to be part of this, obviously. You know, we're going to be feeding into them, but our core market is not going and soliciting police departments. I mean, we're a great ally, there's no doubt about it, but we're not, you know, going to go door kicking with these guys with our technology.
Let's see. I'm not sure if I understand the question. Barb, maybe could you elaborate just a little bit? Wait, let me ask it. I think I do understand now. I'm sorry. So the question is, for accountability's sake, will Portland be constrained from publicly naming Eagle? So meaning, would you prohibit Portland from announcing that it was partnering with Eagle?
It's your policy. Yep.
Stephanie, I can answer that. That when we award this contract, it becomes public record. So whoever is awarded the contract, it's known. So Barb, you'll know who gets awarded. Yes.
I hope I captured that, Barb. Okay, good.
And I have 3 cities ready to share as soon as I get some clearance from Eagle that I can share that. An RFP is public record, so that certainly would be public record for you guys to put out. These other cities may have not had an official RFP, and so we just want to get their blessing to share that. So to have some cities ready for you.
All right. I'm going to give it maybe 30 more seconds for any other questions.
I'm trying to give everybody some time back here, Stephanie.
All right. Jake, I'll answer your question directly. So right now we have representatives from the mayor's office, Commissioner Rubio's office, Commissioner Ryan's office, and Commissioner Gonzalez's office. I don't believe any of the actual commissioners are present, but they are represented here in this space. Okay, here's a question. Does Eagle charge by sensor installed or coverage area?
I can answer that. Oh,
Thanks.
So basically, unlike a SaaS model or subscription model, there's an initial purchase of hardware, and which includes installation for the entire system. And then year 2 is just a service charge per device, per sensor.
Great.
Joe, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit? For the sensors installed, is that X number per square mile? Is that however we choose to deploy it? How does the pricing work?
Yeah, I mean, because we didn't understand the footprint that Portland was asking for, those appear to be in the negotiation stage. We did provide a per square mile or per 3 square miles and 6 square miles. It is an engineered solution, so there isn't a cookie cutter solution depending on streets and how they lay out and buildings involved. You know, given the range of each sensor, where they're mounted and what infrastructure is in the area and how those streets are lined out, that would determine sensor count in any given area. Does that help?
And one of the drivers too is the triangulation aspect. That's typically something that the municipals are looking for. So that ups the sensor count. I think what did we do, Joe? 50 per square mile on this one was kind of our estimate, right?
Yeah.
Sound right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is cost per sensor, not here's your base package, and if you want more than that, there's an additional cost. It's just cost per sensor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. And
Plus
I
it's
think
small.
that should answer that.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we've got all our questions here. I think we've gotten to those, but we will make sure that both presenters have the complete Q&A so that any unanswered questions they have an opportunity to respond to, and we'll make those available. I want to say thanks to both of the presenters for being here tonight, and thanks for all the community members who showed up and asked great questions. We really appreciate it and appreciate the comments that maybe weren't questions. All of that's going to be preserved and shared with council offices. So just really want to appreciate that. And we will, one last question. I'm sorry, one last question. So this question says, are you saying that this tech is not going to be used to dispatch police in Portland?
That would not be a me question. That's a police department response. Our system's capable. I mean,
We will alert on a gunshot detected in an area. Likely that would feed directly to the CAD system or the dispatch system for resources to be deployed.
And I will also say that this request for proposals is specific to alerting the police bureau and our first responders to gunfire. So that would be the the intent of the RFP that went out. All right. Well, I really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. We've came in 3 minutes early, but I really appreciate the time and look forward to further discussion on this.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.